Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Sorry about that little bit of miscommunication we had this morning, but there is no way I would do, or could be up and ready to do a live tutorial at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Yes, I like to sleep in. So, Happy New Year, everybody. I hope 2022 is the best year ever for everyone. And that's all I'm going to say about that is Happy New Year. So let me put my little headband out of my way. So I'm going to be working with the Love is in the Air, an exclusive collection from Country Craft Creations. And of course, what would I be making for a crop? I'm making cards, of course. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you is I can't tell you the names of any of my dies or my embossing folders because I don't keep track of them. I just sort of file them. All my hearts go together. All my Valentine stuff goes together. And then when I want to do a project, I just, as Sally would say, I go in 4-H, but I go in 4-H in my dies and my stamps and my punches. So as you can see, I've got 1 or 2 punches, 1 or 2 dies, but you could make these cards with whatever you have on hand. You could even free cut your hearts and they would look wonderful on any of these cards. Circles could become squares, hearts could become rectangles. You can do whatever you want to do. If you don't have any Valentine sentiments, if you've got a computer and a printer, go to your computer, type in whatever Valentine saying you want, run it through the printer, cut it out, slap it on your card. And hello to everyone that is joining me today. I see quite a few people. Tanya's out there, and hello Yasmin and Carolyn and Julianne and Susan, Tiffany, Mary, Debbie. Where am I now? I've lost my trainers. Alice, Laura, Anita, Denise, Teresa Cooley, welcome, welcome. And may 2022 be the best year ever. So without taking up any more of our time, because I know there's a couple of other recorded tutorials, I think, coming after this one, I'm going to get started. They are all A2 size cards. So I'll give you the measurement of the card base. They are not my traditional folding to the opening to the left. These ones all open to the top, but there's nothing to say that you couldn't do a left-hand fold, you know, a fold that would be landscape or whatever we want to call it. So I'm going to call this a portrait fold, and the traditional ones I do, I'm going to call those landscape folds. So I'll try to remember to use that going forward in my other tutorials. The only other thing I've done is these 3 cards. I have an 1/8 of an inch border around my pattern paper. This one I did a 1/4 of an inch border. And all the cards I'm making today have this measurement. And that's the measurement I'm going to be giving you. Because I kind of like this, but after I made this one, I really like this one better with this particular paper. So, you know, creativity allows me to change it. So, okay, Tanya is saying there is one last. Oh, I'm the last one during doing a tutorial. Okay, I have last show again. So, all right. Hello, Lynn. How are you? Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everybody. So, let's get started. I think I went over some preliminary stuff there. Hopefully I didn't mess anything up as I was getting these cards ready. Yeah, so let's get the card bases out. So I cut 4 card bases. I rounded all the corners. So my card bases measure 4 1/4 by 11. And on the 11-inch side, I scored it 5 1/2. Okay, so that is the measurement for all of our card bases. And then I'm just going to burnish all of these score lines now. So my card bases are ready to roll when I need them. So I hope the weather is cooperating. Hello, Linda. Hello, Teresa Elliott. I hope the weather is cooperating for everybody. We're supposed to get a whole bunch of snow this coming week. I really don't want it, but you know what? You have no control over the weather. Oh, Alice, I am so glad that you have enjoyed. I'm not sure if you're talking about the virtual retreat or you're talking about the crop, but I've sort of been bouncing in between the two. And yes, they are a blast. And on that note about retreats, virtual retreats, if you go to Country Craft Creations and you search Crafty General Store Virtual Retreat, Tammy posted this morning a retreat that's happening in July. It is another virtual retreat and it will sell out. I know it will. So if you're thinking about it, go take a look over at that information. Maybe my friendly Tanya, maybe if she's still out there, because I know she had some things to do, could throw that link into the description or into the comments. But if not, just go to Country Craft Creations, Google virtual retreats, and you will find it, guaranteed. And if you have a problem, well, you guys all know. Oh, she is here. So Tanya, could you do that? Put that link in the description for them, for the virtual retreat that's happening in July. Thank you. I really appreciate that. All right. So we're going to get our first little baggie out here because that's the way I do everything. Pull out all my pieces because I like to work on camera, so you get to sort of see some of my process. I've done a few things ahead of time just to save time. You know, Christine, I do too. And I am not happy about this because where I live in Canada is the Okanagan. We have very mild winters. So we're already a week, almost 2 weeks into this really, really cold weather. And I mean, it's cold. And how I have to tell you is I can only tell you in Celsius. So our daytime highs, like right now, the daytime high is -11. And it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Now that's Celsius. So if you just convert to Fahrenheit, you'll know what I'm talking about, but it's cold. All right, so let's get back on track here. So my base, and this is just a piece of blue. It actually came in the Craftology box, but any blue paper would do. You could use black, you could use red, you could use anything. Gray would have looked awesome with this paper. So this base, so my cardstock base, layering base, I should say, is 4 by 5 1/4. The pattern paper that I'm putting on top of it is 3 3/4 by 5. And then my layering pieces. So this is the piece that's actually running across my card. And this one is a tad smaller than the one I used here because I was running out of this paper. So we're going to go with this measurement. And that is the nice thing about making cards. You don't have to follow anybody's plan. You can make your own plan. Normally, how I start card making is I go to Pinterest and I just look at different sketches, card sketches. Carolyn, if I showed you my massive craft to-do list, you'd probably fall over. Seriously. Yes, I get it. So this little piece of pattern paper measures 1 1/4 by 3 3/4. So this mat is 1/8 of an inch smaller, so it's 1 1/8, but the length is the same. It's 3 3/4 because I wanted it to go from side to side on the pattern paper. And then this one here, this little rectangle that I've only rounded the corners on one side, It is 2, and I'll explain why, by 3 3/4. It is a good thing, Carolyn. I'm never bored. And my matting piece is 1 7/8 by 3 1/8. And the reason I only rounded my corners on the one side was to remind me when I'm assembling my card. Remember, you'll want to tuck this underneath this long rectangle. So that's the purpose of that. And that long rectangle, the piece of cardstock measures 1.5 by 4.5, and the pattern paper measures 1 3/8 by 4. Let me just double check. See, I'm going to cut 1/8 of an inch off of this. I forgot, and it's 1/8 of an inch too long to give me that nice border. And the joys of doing a live tutorial is you get to see the process when something like this happens. I understand, Tiffany. I haven't even started on any of those projects. That's how crazy busy my world has been. So it was 4.5. I want to take 1/8 of an inch off of it. That's what I just did there. And then I'm just going to take my corner rounder. And I'm going to re-ink. And I'm just using a gray. It's actually a soft gray, is what it's called, that I have in my stash. And there we go. And now it'll look much nicer on my pattern, on my cardstock base, when it has that little border around it. Now this circle, so the pattern paper is about 2 1/4 across, and my layering white piece with my sentiment on it is 2 1/8. Like I say, it doesn't have to be a circle. A little square would look very nice there too. All right, and I am going to need a couple of small hearts. Hang on, just gotta get them. They're like, there's my couple of small hearts, and I'm just going to ink them because I kind of forgot that they were going on the top of that little sentiment. Just takes a second. All right, there they are. And then I cut some red seam binding and another little piece that's going to make this little bow over here. All right, so let's get started. We're going to layer everything up together, and then we're going to assemble the card. I am going to use art glitter glue to do my layering because that's just going to go a little quicker. As long as my glue wants to cooperate, there it goes. So, need to look at comments. I was so busy talking, I forgot. Hello, Tanya. You're fine. So remember that this tutorial will be recorded. You will be able to find it in the crop the crop group, which is, what do we call that again? It is the Country Craft Creations New Year's Eve crop, and I believe it says 2021, but of course we're in 2022. Surprised, Carolyn. Now, these cards aren't in the virtual. They're over here on the crop. So remember, there's a crop going on right now, and there's also the virtual retreat going on right now. So yes, it's been a little confusing, but that's, Tammy just wants to give back to you guys, and this is how she does it. So we're going to put this piece on top. I'm not going to really talk about the pieces right now other than calling them this piece. You know what? That's a really good idea, Tanya, is keep it pinned. Yes. You got to find strategies that work for you, because yes, Facebook is a crazy place to try and find things. It was like last night. I was trying to find, oh, it was when Sally and Jimmy and Rick and Tammy were wishing everybody Happy New Year's. I was in the wrong group, and it was nuts. Like, I had to search to find them, and finally I had to message Tanya and say, where are they? I'm lost. But yes, and like Tanya just said there, she actually has guides. So once this is done and it's up on Facebook, I guess it goes up pretty quick on Facebook. She will move it into the guides for the crop, the New Year's Eve crop, and that will make it much easier for you guys to find. So big shout out to Tanya, because she's done some crazy stuff the last couple of days, keeping us all organized. So yes, there's that one. And now the mat itself. You know what? Yes, tears of laughter there, Carolyn. That is exactly what happens. And if you ever get the pleasure of going to an actual live retreat or an in-person retreat, you get that multiple times a day. Yes, I always say I do a bunch of the background stuff for Country Craft Creations, but Tanya's out there talking to you guys and making sure everybody's got what they need when they need it. And yes, can't say enough. All right. So when I am adding my base to my card, I tend to use dry adhesive. And it's because sometimes if your card base is thin, you might see the lines from the glue. Now, it doesn't happen all the time. And I probably would never see the lines or any lines with this because it's 100-pound card base. But it's the habit I have. I can't break the habit, so I'm not even going to try. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put our dry adhesive on the back of our card base. Happy New Year's, Jan. Hello, Michelle Allen. So nice of you to come over. That's very kind of you. I'm always humbled when other designers from Country Craft Creations come and watch one of my lives. And I always go, you guys are so much better than I am. It's just, you know, and to take the time to come and say hello, it's very kind. And I'm sure we all kind of think the same way, but, you know, it is what it is. Now, before I adhere this base to the card base, I'm going to wrap it with my red seam binding. No, I'm not. I'm going to lay this on first. Pardon me for telling you not something that wasn't going to happen. So this is the piece with the pattern paper on it that runs across the center of the card. Let's move those over so you can actually see the card. It's running across the center of that card. And I pretty much centered it side to side. And you know what, Linda? That laughter is so good for our souls. So good. And our glue. Make sure that I kind of got it going the right way. Which one do I want? I'm going to put it this way because I believe I'm going to see more of that sentiment than this one here, because this paper is not really directional. So I'm kind of just eyeballing this, that I'm in the center. And then we'll give it a good burnish. And then we are going to add this piece of seam binding. Let me get this upside down again. Let's find my pokey tool. I'm only going to take the two long sides off. And I'll explain the why to that in a second. I think that's about middle. I'll know pretty quick here. Actually, we're going to let it just be a little off middle. All right. So there's that. So all I did is I wrapped the seam binding around the card, and because I have that dry adhesive, it's got something to stick to. So now I'm just going to put another piece of tape over it so that when I adhere this to the card, I know my seam binding is not going to lift and pull out from underneath the card. I'm also going to put a little bit down the center. There we go. And then we're going to lift all this season. You want me to slow down, Tiffany? No, you're not making these cards right now. That would be pretty hard because you'd have to have had inside knowledge to the stamps and dies. Just watch and relax if that's what you're trying to do. Please. Oh, no, Michelle. Okay. Okay, then that's okay. So now remember my card base is 1/4 of an inch smaller than my actual, no, remember my layering base is 1/4 of an inch smaller than my card base. There, said that right. Just kind of make sure I'm going to be happy. Yeah. And remember, it's a homemade card. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so now this rectangle that I only rounded the two corners, I want to have that piece next. And it's going to go something like that because this big long rectangle is going to go on top of it. I did pop this up, so I'm going to pop it up here too. And I am using some dry adhesive. I just have to move things since for some reason it feels crowded here today. And I'm using the thinnest foam tape, the roll, because that's what I prefer to use. I'm only putting it at the top and the bottom because it's going over this layering piece that I've already put on the card. So we've got some height there anyway. And if I put foam here in the middle, it's going to make this piece kind of round a little bit because the middle is going to be too high. So I'm going to put this about there, about 1/2 an inch in from the side of the card base, matting base, whatever we are going to refer to it as. Oh, well, that was kind of going to be the way my weekend was going to go. I was going to tell my husband he was chief cook and bottle washer this weekend. But it's kind of a funny story. My husband tripped a week ago. And his foot was swollen. Like, I mean swollen. And I kept saying to him, "You think we should go to emergency?" "No, we don't need to go to emergency. I just need to give it some time," he kept saying to me. Well, finally, Thursday, he decided he should go to emergency. He fractured his metatarsal, which is the long bone that goes from your baby toe, I think, up the foot, if I've understood correctly what the doctor said to me that day. And he's now in an air boot for the next 4 weeks. So he needs to have some sympathy. And he's being very good about it. He's not trying to be macho guy like he was during the week where he was just saying, "Oh, it's just a bad sprain. It's just a bad sprain." Yeah, no, it wasn't just a bad sprain. So I am putting a couple of tiny pieces of foam tape down the left-hand side, so the back of the left-hand side, just again to make sure I keep my height. And I'm going to put this, so it's going to be about a half an inch, no, a little bit more than that, more like a 3/4 of an inch over from the left-hand side of the card. Yeah, I think it does hurt. I really do. Yeah. He was not a happy camper on Thursday because it took them 6 hours in emergency before they finally saw him. Yeah, Thursday was not a pretty day around here. So I'm taking it about 3/4 of an inch. I'm centering it top to bottom on my card. And voila, there we go. Oh, he didn't. To be honest, he did not want to go to the emergency because my husband also has a brain injury. So any of those crazy loud places bother him quite a bit. And yeah, but you know what? We're done. He has his boot. Yeah, he just tripped as he was getting up out of a chair. Anyway, he's got his boot. He's taking it easy. He'll be fine. So all I did with the seam binding is I slipped the short piece under my piece of seam binding I had laid across the middle of the card. And I'm going to cut it now. And I literally just tied it in a small knot. And however I want to put my tails on my seam binding, that's what's going to happen. And then our sentiment, and we need I put a teeny tiny little bit of fantasy fiber underneath it. So I'm just going to turn around and get my fantasy fiber. And oh, well, then I will tell him he's a very lucky man that he's only got to wear this boot for 4 weeks. Mind you, in 4 weeks, he goes for an x-ray, and I guess we'll see what's going from there. Okay, so we're going to put some fantasy fiber on the back of our circle, and I'm just kind of positioning it where I kind of want it, and I want my fantasy fiber to kind of be coming out of the right top side of the circle. And I'm trying something new today with my fantasy fiber because I struggle. I hope my arm's not too much in the camera. I struggle sometimes with fantasy fiber to get it laid down. So I'm resorting to some cello tape here, Scotch tape. I don't know. I call it cello because I have some English influence. Just gonna make sure that those aren't. Now, you know what? I really liked using that, the tape. I am going to cut off the little pieces that are hanging out over, meaning the little pieces of tape, because they're going to bug me. Okay. So, you know what? Another trick. I really do like using the tape for my fantasy fiber. And I think that looks really nice there like that. Yes, well, this boot is a pretty schnookum air boot. I am shocked at how well it works. And I forgot my people over on YouTube. Hello, Taylor. Hello, Anne-Marie. Happy New Year's to both of you. Sorry, ladies, I got busy and I forgot to go back and check. So we want to gain some tape. And of course, that's got to go off. So we'll get rid of that and put us back where we were. There we are. You know, when you touch the button on the phone to turn off the alarm and you end up being someplace you didn't want to be. All right, so we're putting some fantasy fiber, or tape there and tape here. And we're going to add this. And we're going to just tuck this right. So we're putting this right over almost to the left-hand side or at the left-hand side of this long rectangle. Something like that. And then I am going to put a little bit of foam tape on the back of these two teeny tiny hearts. And then we'll have this card finished. And this is one of the more difficult, well, it's got a lot of parts to it. It's not difficult, it just got parts. So let's put one on the back of this heart. And let's put this one that I've now rolled into a neat little ball, which we're not going to use because I'd like a little bit flatter than that. Yes, well, he will be able to stay stationary because our son came and moved some things around so that's easier for me to get at. And yeah, I really hope it doesn't snow because if it does, I'm going to have to learn how to drive our quad. And I can just see me driving a quad to plow the snow down our driveway because we only have 200 feet of driveway. It's just a little driveway. Okay, come on. There we go. No point me rushing it because that's just going to make it take longer. So I'm going to add one here. No, a little higher. One here. And one here. And there is our first card. Oh, we want to put a little bit of red gems. So these are the little gems that Tammy sells at Country Craft Creation. I'm going to get out 3. I love these gems. And we're going to get rid of the fantasy fiber off my desk so that we have room that I can see what everybody's saying, if anybody's saying, or if I've bored you. So I always put a little bit of glue just on my Teflon mat. And then what I do is I take my gems, tap them in the glue, and then add them to my card or my project. I just find it's less messy for me this way. And I'm just kind of eyeballing them to make sure that they're nice and straight. And I like the distance between them. This is where the fun starts, is when I'm putting down the third one to make sure that I've got my distance the same. Yep, like that. So there is card 1 completed. It could be, Carolyn, it could end up being one of my jobs. So I'm going to put these 2 over here. I'll bring them all back at the end of our project today. So our next card, I love the simplicity of this card. I love that it's just a clean, easy Valentine card. And it looks like it's not, but it is. Well, thank you, Linda. That's what this is all about. That's what Tammy has created with us, is she loves it when we can share some of the tricks of the trade we've come across over the years. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is my sizes. So again, the cardstock mat is 4 by 5 1/4. This white piece of cardstock that is actually going to be like in the place of pattern paper, it measures 3 3/4 by 5. Now, what I did with this small piece, or with this piece of white artisan, is we're going to set these up here. I put it in my scoreboard, and with my stylus, I started at 1/4 inch, and I scored down to about 3. And then I just kept repeating that every 1/4 inch until I got across the card. Now, this only works if you're working with a width that is like 1/4 inch. If you're working with some other odd width, then you're going to probably have to do some figuring to make sure you keep all your, your score lines evenly spaced. But yes, it looks like it's it looks like you ran it through an embossing folder, but you didn't. You did it with your stylus. So let's get this card put together. Oh, and then these little hearts here, there's 3 of them, and they are about 1 3/4 inches across by about 1.5 tall. And this one, I did run it through an embossing folder, an embossing folder I had with a bunch of dots. So I punched out this heart first, then I laid it in my embossing folder and ran it through my machine. And that's how I got the little dots on this paper. And this is some of that foil shimmer paper that Tammy has in the store. So let's get started. Now, for this card, we're going to put art glitter glue on the back of it. And as soon as I get this card laid down, I'll check back for comments or anybody needs to ask me something. So we're going to center this, remembering we've got 1/4 inch. There we go. And I love this. Well, Lynn, you'd know I would love this because I always keep saying I'm as simple as more. And so is Lynn. So we kind of tend to gravitate to the same things. So again, I've got another piece of seam binding. I just cut a piece about 7 inches long. I just want enough that I can have some tails on the backside. So again, and I can see my work surface is getting all crowded with stuff, which should that surprise anybody? No. Okay. And this side. And you know what? You could use this. Yes, we are, Lynn. You could use this technique of scoring for lots of different events. I'll do another scoring card here where I only score around the outer edges of it a couple of times, and it gives it like a frame effect. And the only thing that's stopping you is your imagination. I always say that when I talk about coming up with ideas. It's having the time to think up the ideas. So I'll get this off. So I'm taking the 2 long sides off first, because again, I'm going to wrap my seam binding around the card. And where I wrap it is, I try to make sure, what I want to do is I want to cover up the ends of all my score lines. So something like that. That way. And then just make sure I'm nice and straight, or as straight as I can be. And then I'm going to cut off a little bit of extra. Sorry for that noise. A set of tweezers getting caught with my scissors. Sometimes happens around here. And again, we are going to put more score tape over the seam binding. Like so. And then let's peel everything off. And like I say, you could do all of this with the art glitter glue. This is my go-to. It's not right and it's not wrong. It's just what I do. All right, so bring your card base in. Again, remembering we've got 1/4 inch around. And if you look at the original card, I did not round the corners on it, but I decided to round them on this one. There we go. Just do a quick little short burnish. And the other thing I did, another tip I'll give you, is when I do my stamping, I stamp on my paper before I do my score lines. That's the one thing I do. The second thing I do is I stamp all my sentiments on the whatever paper I'm using. And then I set them aside to let them have a little bit longer dry time. Because the worst thing you'd want to do is while you're burnishing is to muck up your stamp, because you've stamped right on this piece of artisan. And if you don't have a stamp and you want to print this, then you could have a little sentiment here with a little bit of pattern paper underneath it, or cardstock underneath it. So let's get started on our hearts. So our first heart is going to go more to the top of the seam binding, and it was just glued down with the art glitter glue, because I'm trying to make some dimension happen here. So it kind of went like so, give or take. Give it a little burnish. Exactly, Michelle. Exactly. If it isn't broken, don't fix it. And now my silver heart is going more to the right, but I want to be able to see this heart in behind. So I'm going to put some foam tape on the back of this heart. And I often put X's on the wrong side of things I'm creating, because then I won't glue it down the wrong way. Now with this I wouldn't have, but like on this one, if you can see there's an X, like X marks the spot on that heart. And that was just to remind me that's the wrong side of the paper. You're not using that. Okay, and as I've said many times before, I tend to use tweezers for jobs like this. Just put this one here. Something like that. Now, I have some thicker foam tape. So just like you have thin pop dots and you have thick pop dots, I'm going to use my thicker tape on this one. So this piece is going to go over here, and this is some foam tape I've had forever. So I want to use it up. I just want to see. Yeah. So what we're going to do here is we're putting a thick piece of foam tape on the one side of that heart. And then I'm going to put a thinner piece of foam tape on the other side of the heart. So I'll show you that in a second. And the reason for that is because this heart is already popped up and this one's not. I have to make my foam tape help me compensate for that. So let's remove this. Oh, Gail, you are so welcome. I love making cards. And you know what? I have always said since I started making cards for Tammy, that the point of making my cards is I want you to be able to make my cards with things you have on hand. Now, I know today I use some dies. Normally I don't, but today that's just where I had it. But like I said again, if you don't have a heart, make it a square, make it a rectangle. Just put pattern paper on it and stack them up like this, and it would make a beautiful, beautiful card. So there is our card 2 finished. And we're going to move on to card 3. Now, I have to tell you a story. This Happy Valentine's Day stamp, I was a preschool teacher. I bought this for when I was teaching preschool, and now here I am using it on a card that I'm making to make me sing kind of deal. So let's get out all our pieces. We'll talk about the sizes. So this card, of course, has a base. A few things out of our way. I'm going to need them again, but just to make it easy. So the red cardstock base is 4 by 5 1/4. The pattern paper is 3 3/4 by 5. And then these two little strips that we're going to use, they are both the same. So the cardstock measures 1 by 3 3/4 because again, I want it to only go across the pattern paper, not across the cardstock that's underneath. So they're both the same. So they're 1 by 3 3/4. And then the matting layers or the pattern paper is 7/8. So 7/8 of an inch by the 3 3/4 times 2. This heart, so the heart I stamped on, is a heart that measures 3 1/2 by about 3 1/8. And the cardstock that goes behind that heart is a 3 5/8 by 3 1/4. And there, you know, like I say, make it a square, make it a rectangle. So let's layer up our pieces. And then we'll build the card. There is no seam binding on this card, but you certainly could have put seam binding on it. So just centering it, and running it across the card. Whoops. Hopefully that's going to be okay. Yeah, it'll be fine. And then my other was going, where is that other piece of red? And this is a great way to use up your scraps from a collection after you've made your big project. Because I typically don't throw anything out until I get down to all the projects I want to make. Because, you know, just a little piece of paper. I'm just cutting off a little bit of the pattern paper because it's kind of hanging over my cardstock. Hello, Miss Lillian. Happy New Year. There's our, remember this is 1/4 of an inch smaller than the piece of cardstock I'm mounting it on. Hi, Debbie. Well, thank you very much for popping over. That's very kind of you. And just remember, the red heart is 1/8 of an inch bigger than my blue heart. This blue heart is a piece of the pattern paper, and then I just stamped on top of it. And you know what? If you look at the pattern paper, you might find, like you could say, you could do this one, sending all my love to you, and cut out a heart that has that in the center of it, because that would definitely fit. Or just do it on a rectangle. All right, so we're going to do like we did before. And if you want to know the color of cardstock I'm using my colors that Tammy sells in the store, and it's red cherry. Well, thank you, Lillian. I can't wait to see if you make them, what you do to them, because you'll jazz them up. And I love your cards. I love your tags. Lillian is a very talented crafter when it comes to she just does some beautiful work. So if you were at the live retreat in October in Utah, there was a house that Lillian decorated, and it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. So let's take the backing off our card base. I'm going to take this off too. It's just me. You don't have to. I just have the need. For some reason I'm thinking, well, maybe that could come off. But it won't. Just me. All right. So let's center our card or our base onto our card base. Keeping in mind there's 1/4 of an inch. All right. And now we're going to add these 2 strips with some glue. Now, when I added these 2 strips, I wanted them to be underneath my heart. So my top one is down about an inch or so, someplace there. And then our bottom one, sorry. I'm trying a new idea for my art glitter glue and it's working, but I think I need to wet my foam so I don't move around. So I'm going to put the second one about the same distance from the bottom. So about 1.25 inches, give or take. Something like that. Making sure it's not crooked. And then this is going on top of it, like so. But again, I put some fantasy fiber. So I'm getting down my jar again. We're just going to pull out, a little tuft of it. And I think I've told you guys before that this idea is courtesy of Lillian. She showed me how she stores hers. And I liked the idea so much that I borrowed it. And it's a great idea. Well, thank you, Ruth. Yes, I do like making cards. So I've attached my fantasy fiber with a piece of tape. And I'm going to put this, I'm going to cut this tape a little smaller since it's too big for me. Stay in the camera instead of stepping outside the camera. All right, let me look at my card again. Yeah, want my fantasy fiber just peeking out from this, something like that. And that's what I want. I actually really like using the tape to lay down my fiber. Better than glue on the fingers. All right, so we did pop this up. I'm just going to take a wee boo here. Yeah, I just used the thinner foam tape. And I took a just going to lift up my fantasy fibers. I'm probably even going to cut that fantasy fiber. I'm going to cut this fantasy fiber off the bottom. And then we're going to take another piece and put it across the top. So, and I want a little teeny tiny piece on the very tip of this. Something like that. So let's just make sure I'm going to be happy, which I am. So I wanted to make sure that my tape was going to be on those long rectangle strips that I put on. Thanks, Jen. You're always so kind with your words. Thank you. I'm so glad you like them. And like I've said so many times before, I just go to Pinterest. Now I'm noticing something. So in my original card, I had it coming up both sides, the fantasy fiber. This one is just out the top, and I'm okay with that. But I'm going to cut my fantasy fiber because I don't like the fact that it was, it looked like it wasn't loose enough for me. And you can give your fantasy fiber a haircut. I do it all the time. So there we go. And now I'm going to get out a couple little pieces of bling. And this is just some bling I have in my stash. Can't tell you where I got it from because I don't remember. And they're just little silver balls. And they just add a little bit of something to the card. I need these tweezers though. And so I'm gonna do this a little different this time. And another one over here. You could put adhesive behind them. And two more. And there's our card. Love it. Love it. So there's card number 3 done. Let's put these away so they're not taking up valuable craft table space. And last card. And again, this card looks like it's a lot of work, but it's not because these are all punches. Even my sentiment is has a little punch. I have a little punch that sentiment fits. So let me get up my little hearts. I have 6 teeny tiny hearts. This one's just attached by its adhesive. I have 6 teeny tiny hearts and 3 big hearts. So let me get them turned over. I figured they were going to stick together. I've already put the foam tape on the back of them. I just thought it would help speed up things here. So the only measurements I'm really going to give you this time are these matting layers. And of course, we know the pink piece. It is 4 by 5 1/4, which makes this 3 3/4 by 5. And we're going to put our fantasy fiber back up in its home. And then get my glue. I'm going to cheat this time and see if I'm still going to be happy. And let me check. It's going to go like this. Keeping in mind there's a 1/4 inch around. And I'm just going to turn it over because with it having an embossed folder, because that's how I got those dots all over the white artisan, was with an embossing folder I have. I don't want to crush my dots. And then we're going to add dry adhesive. And you know what? This dry adhesive thing may have come from when I first was making cards and I could never put on a base straight. And at least if I use dry adhesive, I could always use undo to get it off. I don't use nearly the amount of undo as I once did. And we are almost finished these cards. I don't know where my time is. Oh, I've done pretty good. Because I don't want to bore you with this, but it does take a while to make cards even when you have everything. Thank you, Melissa. That is so kind of you. I'm glad you like the cards. And I can't wait to see what you guys create with this idea. Remember, the collection is Love is in the Air. It's a country craft exclusive collection. This small ruler, Cheryl, this is a big Tim Holtz ruler that I broke, and my dear husband cut it for me, and that's how I ended up with a 3.5 inch ruler. I have the other half of it here too. This is a 6.5 inch ruler, because that was kind of where I broke it. But yes, my dear husband helped me. I went to him one day with it saying, "Can you salvage this for me?" Because Tim Holtz rulers are expensive. I was so annoyed with myself. I dropped it. I don't even remember everything I did to it that day, but it was not a good day. So adding our backing, or our pink cardstock, and with our artisan with the dots on it. And now we're going to start building this card. So I am going to add my sentiment first, so I know where that is when I start layering up everything else. I am going to just put glue on the back of it. A little bit of fantasy fiber, and I just blew it off. And so this is going to go near the bottom of my card, but centered side to side, something like this. Looks good to me. Because the dots will make it look like it's raised a little off the, give a little bit of dimension too. Yes, I actually have 2 on the go right now because I misplace them all the time, Cheryl. All right, so now we're going to start by placing our big hearts first. So I'm just going to remove the foam backing from them one at a time. And I'm going to put one up here. So these hearts are a little different than the ones I used in my original card. Plus, my original card is 1/8 of an inch bigger. Because I mentioned that at the beginning of this tutorial that I had made these cards, and then as I was cutting paper today, I went, you know, I think I like them better with that 1/4 of an inch. And the last big heart is going on. And like I say, these are, you get to put these hearts wherever you want to. And then as for the little ones, it's kind of the same thing. You get to put them where you think they're gonna, you know, where they sing to you. And I'm just adding them. As I think they're going to fit. Last 2 hearts going on. So look in your stash. Go foraging, as Sally would say, in your dies and your stamps. See what you have, and you'd be surprised what you're going to find. I'm always shocked when I do that. When I start a project and I go and I start to look through my dies and stamps and I go, oh, and you know, if you've got a cricket or a silhouette, I know that there's a lot of free or almost free SVG files. I think I'm saying them the right way. So you could go back and you could take your Wink of Stella, if you've got Wink of Stella, and you could, you know, add a little Wink of Stella to your cards where you might want it. So there are the cards we've made today. I hope you've enjoyed being with me while we've done this. And Happy New Year is what I have to say to everybody. We will see you on my next live tutorial. Remember, when this goes on to my YouTube channel, that is All Things Paper by Bonnie. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe. Please like, because all those things help me and get all of Tammy's beautiful paper out there in the world. So Happy New Year, everybody. We will see you on my next live. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.